Okay, good evening. It's good to be here. I appreciate you coming. And what we've been talking about are 8 principles that will help you to have a better life, better health. And tonight we're on our 3rd one. I'm sorry we didn't record the first presentation that we did, but I do have a little bit of a review that we'll do. I used to call it a new, old, and living way, but I decided to change the title to Life the Old-Fashioned Way. And the reason I call it Life the Old-Fashioned Way is because all 8 of the principles that we are sharing in this series were found in the very beginning when God created the heavens and the earth. I'm a creationist, and I believe that God created us, He created the world, and He gave us everything that we need in order to be healthy. And so the first night we talked about nutrition. We're talking about these 8 things through the scope of what we call epigenetics. Epigenetics is a new study, relatively new, that talks about it talks about the switches that are on our genes. We actually have little switches, like, as it were, that turn off things like disease, things like cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, all this kind of stuff. These switches can be turned on by the diet and the lifestyle that we choose to have. Okay? In the first talk, as I said, we talked about proper nutrition. We talked about studies by Drs. Campbell and Esselstyn, and they showed without a doubt that cancer cells can be turned off, and that genes, the genetic expression, which is a genotype for heart disease, can be turned off just like a switch based on how we choose to live. Okay, in our second talk we talked about exercise and how exercise affects our genes, and how if we properly exercise on a daily basis, we can actually extend our life, extend our health, and extend actually the quality of our life as well. When we talked about exercise, we talked about gene methylation. This is kind of a big term maybe. A methyl group, you see the C here, that's a carbon. It's 1 carbon and 3 hydrogens. That's what a methyl group is. Cell methylation is vital to health because these methyl groups, see down here, the methyl groups are responsible for providing the energy for thinking, detoxing, fighting infections, viruses, and turning the bad genes off and the good genes on. That's one of the things the methyl groups do. Now, on our genes, at the end of each gene, we have a little section. Does anybody remember what that's called? Don't look.
Cap.
What's that?
Called a cap.
Well, yeah. That's the layman's term for it. It's actually called a telomere. At the end of each of our little DNA, section of DNA, is a little section called a telomere, and some people have likened that to the little cap at the end of your shoestring that keeps the DNA from unraveling. It keeps the ends of the DNA from the chromosomes from touching, which kind of like what happens if you touch 2 wires together? You get a short, right? Well, the Lord's smart. He put these telomeres on there, and what that is, it's a repetition of genetic material, so that each time the chromosomes divide, a little bit of that genetic material is lost. Well, God put these little caps on the end so that our genes could divide. They can afford to lose a little information because of those telomeres. Now, the life and the diet that you choose can lengthen or shorten those telomeres. When the telomere gets so short and it's used up, guess what? It's curtains, okay? That's the end. So we want to lengthen our telomeres, okay? So what we're going to talk about tonight is how water can help in cell methylation and lengthening those telomeres and making us healthy at the genetic level. Turn off those switches for disease. Turn on those switches for health. That's what we want to do, okay? So tonight we're going to talk about water a little bit. Did you know, talking about epigenetics now, that your genes cannot function properly if you're dehydrated? We are electrical beings, and the medium for that electricity to be transmitted is what? Water. water. We are hydroelectric beings. So dehydration of the cerebrospinal fluid prohibits or prevents the activation of or the methylation of these DNA and RNA genes. So it's very important that we stay well hydrated. And the neurotransmitters, as we just mentioned, function in a hydroelectric environment. So if you're dehydrated, your nervous system won't function properly. You see things like depression, anxiety, all these kind of things. A lot of times these are simply the fact that the individual is dehydrated, chronically dehydrated. We're going to talk about cellular dehydration a little bit tonight. A shocking, look at this, 75% of Americans. Do you think you're dehydrated? Raise your hand if you think you're dehydrated. Well, that's good. I have some. For today, you probably are. Okay, all right. We're going to do our experiment right now, okay? Because you said that, I'm going to change the order of my talk just a little bit. Pastor Fred, since you acknowledged, would you please pass everybody a bottle of water, okay? And Carol, I'm going to employ you as well. Carol's got one. Would you please take this? And I want you to take the spoon. This is, what's in there is Celtic sea salt, and we're going to talk about the Celtic sea salt. I want you to take that and just take the spoon and give everybody 1 grain. That's coarse Celtic sea salt. Give everybody 1 grain, and once everybody has it, let me know. Go ahead, and while you're doing that, I'll continue with my presentation. I was going to do this later on in the talk, but now seems like a fitting time to do that. It's coarse grain, so you'll know you have it. And you can take a large grain. If they're small, you can take 2. This portion of our presentation I call Water My Genes, Please, because even our genetics is dependent on the level of hydration of our body. Here's some statistics. The body is 75% water. Can everybody hear me okay? You can hear me okay? Okay. The body is 75% water from here down, from the neck down. From the neck up, what's the percentage? 85% water. The next time somebody calls you a waterhead, thank them for the compliment. Okay? Stomach mucus is 99% water, and the blood is about 98% water. Now the Bible says that the life of the flesh is where?
In the blood.
In the blood.
Leviticus 17.
Yes, Leviticus 17. Well, we were going to wait and do it all at the same time. Okay?
Shirley had to eat hers.
Shirley already did it, huh? What we're gonna do, and you can go ahead and do it if you want, since we've already kind of started. I want you to take that little grain of salt, put it on your tongue, and then drink. Okay? Don't swallow the salt. Just let it dissolve on your tongue. Okay? A lot of people say, I don't like water. I don't like the way it tastes. That will help. But there's another reason why we're doing that, and I'll explain that as we go on in our talk. But go ahead and do the experiment. Put the grain of salt, it's Celtic sea salt, and I'll explain a little bit later why we use the Celtic sea salt. Put that on your tongue and drink. Okay? The life of the flesh is in the blood. Now, if our blood is 98% water, what do you suppose happens to the quality of your life if you're dehydrated? Yeah. It's kind of a given, isn't it? If the blood is 98% water and the life is in the blood and you don't have enough water, you don't have a good quality of life. Your blood is not a good quality either. Now, I'm glad that we're drinking the water, because did you know that if an individual who is relatively well hydrated, the thirst mechanism is functioning properly. But in people who are chronically dehydrated, the thirst mechanism is broken, as it were. You may not feel thirsty even though you're dehydrated. That's kind of scary. So we have to kind of use our heads a little bit. We have to learn to look beyond signals that may be broken in our body. We have to educate ourselves. Also, the need for water is often misinterpreted as hunger. So often people eat when what they need is water. Well, the process of breaking down that food requires water. So what does that further do to the body? It further dehydrates the body. Okay? If you're forgetting to drink, yes.
What's this salt supposed to do as we drink our water over the
I didn't
salt?
understand.
We're coming to that. We're coming to that, okay? Yeah, you can put it on your tongue and go ahead and drink and just experience the sensation and stuff. And we'll get to that in just a few
Try not to
minutes.
swallow this.
Just let it dissolve. Let it dissolve on the tongue. If you're forgetting to drink, remember, all Alzheimer's and dementia patients suffer from chronic dehydration. All of them. Yes.
Could somebody that's chronically dehydrated, could that cause Alzheimer's?
Can it cause?
Can it cause Alzheimer's or dementia?
I'm not going to say that it causes it. I really believe, and if you study, I'm going to introduce you to, now I had to practice long and hard to say this name, and you'll see why. I'm going to call him Dr. B right now. This book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water. I highly recommend this book. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. It will give a paradigm shift to your thinking about health in general, not just about water. Excellent material. We're going to talk about this a little bit further on in the talk. Okay, most people can tolerate a 3 to 4% in total body water loss without difficulty. 5 to 8% decrease can cause fatigue and dizziness. Loss of over 10% of total body water can cause physical and mental deterioration, accompanied by severe thirst. You get to 15 to 25%, that's curtains, okay? That's not a huge margin of error, really, if you think about it. Chronic dehydration can cause histamine, which is part of the inflammatory process. It can cause histamine to become excessively active, and this can result in symptoms like allergies, asthma, dyspepsia, colitis, constipation, rheumatoid arthritis, and chronic pains in various parts of the body, such as migraine headaches. In fact, dyspeptic pain, even GERD, esophageal reflux, may only be the early signs of dehydration. So if you're not thirsty but you're suffering from these chronic stomach things, guess what? Your thirst mechanism may be broken and you may simply be chronically dehydrated. And if you remember when we looked at the percentage of stomach mucus, 99% water, and that mucus forms a lining in the stomach. And if you're dehydrated, that lining is very thin, so that the stomach acids can begin to digest the stomach itself. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. In fact, I'm going to get ahead of myself here. 75% of the body's, the upper body weight, 75% of the weight from here up rests on one disc, right here, the 5th lumbar disc. Dehydration in that disc right there is responsible for a lot of back pain. And so if you're having severe problems with your L5, drink some water. It might help. Water is the medium to transport and deliver nutrients to the cells and remove toxins and metabolic waste from the cells. So if you're dehydrated, your cells are malnourished and they're not able to get rid of their waste. And so you can see, in fact, a lot of people who suffer with cancer, it stems from dehydration. I see everybody guzzling the water. I'm very thankful for that. That's good. Okay, now here's Dr. B's name, Batman Gehelde. I practiced a long time to be able to say that. Your body's many cries for water. Dr. Batman Gehelde says that pain unexplained by injury or infection is directly linked to dehydration. That's amazing. That is an amazing statement to me. Same Dr. Batman Gehelde.
Indian name?
I'm not sure if it's Indian or like Middle East somewhere. I assumed that it was Indian, but he was a prisoner in Iran, as we're just fixing to. He was a political prisoner in Iran many years ago, and he had only water to treat his patients with. He treated over 3,000 fellow prisoners. All he had to treat them with was water. What do you think the percentage of the cure rate was?
50.
100% improvement. Yes, all of his patients got well, and all he did was give them water to drink. That is amazing to me. Okay? He had a man that had severe stomach pains. This guy was doubled over. He talks about it in his book. But if you want to look at this, you're welcome to look at thumb through it after the meeting. Anyway, this man was just doubled over with pain, just severe pain. And all he had to give him was a glass of water. So he gave him 2 glasses of water within, just a short span of time. And the man kind of eased up a little bit. He was able to sit up straight. And after about an hour or so of drinking all this water, he was completely pain-free. Whereas before he had been doubled over. But you say, I drink 8 glasses of water a day. You can drink plenty of water and still be dehydrated if your mineral balance is off. You talked about sweating a lot. When you sweat, do you just lose water? You lose salt too. Your sweat is salty. Okay? When you urinate, there's minerals that are lost in the urine, in the stool, in the tears, in the breath that comes out. We're not losing just water. And so if we're only replacing just water and we're not on a diet that will give us the minerals that we need, we're in trouble. Our cells are chronically dehydrated. Our cells are completely dependent on potassium and on sodium to function properly. In fact, there's 4 very vital elements to life. Air is the first one. We'll talk about that in a later talk. The second one is water, and then you have sodium and potassium. And that's because the sodium-potassium pump you've heard about, that's what keeps the cells in balance. Okay? We're gonna look at this. Yes, sir?
At what point does the balance come between too much water and not enough?
Can you let me continue? Because I think I might answer that question. And then if I don't, we'll come back to it. Is that okay? Is that okay? I want to look at this. And can everybody read this? Is this kind of small? I'll read it. Okay, the first thing that happens, we lose water through our sweat. Okay? And we're not just losing water, right? We're losing salt too. Okay, that's the first thing. Then, because water is lost through the sweat, fluid from the bloodstream furnishes the sweat glands, okay? That water that we lose is pulled from the blood, okay? Follow? All right. Then because our blood doesn't have the volume that it needs, it steals it from the tissues, okay? So now water and salt have moved from the tissues into the bloodstream because the bloodstream has to maintain this balance, okay? And then once the tissues, where are they going to go to get it? To get their water. They're going to go to the cells. So fluid shifts from the cells into the tissues. So what state does that leave our cells in?
Dehydrated.
Dehydrated, exactly. Now, suppose you just drink water. Is that water going to be able to get back into the cell if you don't replace the minerals that you've lost too? No. And this is why 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated, because we're not replacing the minerals that we need. Okay? Look at this. Now, Carol. Gatorade. Shoot that man. Gatorade has excitotoxins and all kind of. Does it have high fructose corn syrup? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
We'd have to look at the label.
But it's advertised to replace the minerals.
And it does have some minerals and stuff, but it's also got to run your blood sugar up like crazy. Okay. And it's got dyes in it. What's that?
We'd be better off with coconut water.
Coconut water, yeah, coconut water is good stuff, but not everybody can get coconut water. When you're dehydrated, cell membranes, get this now, cell membranes become less permeable. So they're needing water, but because they're dehydrated, they're less permeable to water and to nutrients, okay? They're less permeable. Sodium levels outside of the cells rise. And then Carol, what is this? You see that?
I do.
What is it?
Edema.
Edema. That's because the water's in the wrong place. It's in the tissues, interstitial tissues, the spaces between the cells, instead of inside the cells. Okay? So you know, I don't want to drink because it makes my feet swell.
Something else going on.
What's that?
Sounds like there's something else going on.
There is something else going on. What would a doctor do for this person?
Oh, he would give him Lasix.
He would give him Lasix, which is a diuretic, and he would restrict salt intake and fluid intake. That's totally the opposite of what he needs. Okay? Crazy. Dr. Batman Geheldig was just about stoned by the AMA when he came out with it. It's a paradigm shift in thinking for the medical society. So the cells have to have nourishment to survive, and the body responds to this decreased permeability by trying to force that water into the cell. What do we call that? We call that hypertension. Do you see? It's the body, the heart has to try harder to get that fluid inside the cell, and it's trying so hard to get the fluid in the cell, when if we would give it a little salt. Now, am I talking about table salt? Table salt is toxic. That's just two elements. That's sodium and chloride. That's a toxin. In fact, what happens if you inject sodium chloride into somebody's veins? That's right. It would kill him. It's very toxic. And table salt kills the taste buds. So what we're talking about is this salt like we gave you tonight. That's Celtic sea salt, okay? Celtic salt. It has, I think, is it 82 minerals? I think it's 82 minerals that Celtic salt has. There's also a salt called CEL, Celtic salt. CELTIC. I should have put a picture up here, but I didn't think about it.
How's it different from,
Pink Himalayan.
Pink Himalayan. Celtic salt actually has a few more minerals than the pink Himalayan, but they're both good, okay, because they both have more of the minerals. See, because it's not just sodium, it's not just potassium. There's a whole lot of other minerals like magnesium and selenium and all these things that are tagging along in that Celtic or Himalayan sea salt that the cells do need, but they need them in a much smaller amount. What they need the most of is sodium and potassium. And so if you use the Celtic sea salt, pastors, don't eat the whole cup. Anyway, that's good. Yes, we want you to drink. We want you, in fact, I'm going to get ahead of myself. We'll stick with it. So the doctor, yes, would put this person on diuretics and restrict his salt, but that's not what he needs. We need a paradigm shift. What's a paradigm shift? What's a paradigm? You know, you're my word man.
Paradigm is a picture, a perspective.
Yes.
And it's a shift means that we, instead of looking at these windows, we look at that door.
Okay. Right. That's a good way to put it. He's a word man. According to Dr. Batman Geheldig's paradigm shift, what that patient needs, this guy right here, is exactly the opposite. He needs salt, like what we're using here, the Celtic salt, which will help to transport that water into the cell, which is where he's dehydrated. That's what that person needs. The medical society it's completely counterintuitive to physicians to think that way. They don't get it. This is a quote from Dr. Batman Geheldig. Basically, there are two oceans of water in the body. One ocean is held inside the cells of the body, and the other ocean is held outside the cells of the body. Good health, and here's maybe your answer. Good health depends on a delicate balance between the two volumes of these two oceans. The balance of the two oceans in our body is achieved, number one, by drinking enough water daily. Number two, by adding a moderate amount of natural salt to our diet. And number three, here's where you get your potassium, by eating a variety of potassium-rich fruits and vegetables. And that takes us back to the first talk that we did in this series of nutrition. We want to eat a properly balanced diet. Okay? Yes?
What I was talking about, I don't know, maybe you'll talk about this later.
Okay.
I knew of a person that drank so much water they got water poisoning. It was called.
Okay.
And
Okay.
They drank like 5 gallons of water almost non-stop.
Yeah. But you remember we talked about if you just replace water, you could hurt yourself. If he had been drinking water with, like what we're talking about, that he would not have been able to drink 5 gallons of water, okay?
But he's just washed all his.
He's washed all his
electrolytes out.
electrolyte, yes. And I'm not going to get into it in this talk, but there's things with the kidney, like the hormones, aldosterone and stuff like that, that regulate that balance, which if you have this proper balance of minerals versus water, and we're going to talk about that here in the next slide or two, you can't drink that much water, okay? And so we have to think, we have to educate ourselves, okay? Dr. B recommends drinking half your body weight in ounces of clean water each day and dissolving about an 1/8 teaspoon of unrefined natural salt on your tongue. Don't put it in the water. Put it on your tongue. I'm still trying to understand that fully, but I think what it is, when you put it on your tongue, when you put it in the water, the magnesium that's in the water becomes saturated with water so that it doesn't have the same effect in your body to pull the water into the cell. That's my understanding, but I'm still studying. My jury's out on that one. I don't clearly understand that yet, so I'm learning. This is the pink salt that they were talking about, by the way, and you can get it in this coarse ground like that, or you can get it in a finer ground. How many of you use this pink or Celtic salt? You notice it's wetter. It clumps up like when we have these humid days like we do here in the South.
I didn't know you could buy it in already finer.
Oh yeah,
Seen them.
yeah. In fact, we have it on our web store, www.closureforjesus.com. Yeah, we do sell both of these on our web store, and so yeah, you can get it in a finer ground. But the reason it's wetter like that is because magnesium is a very water-hungry molecule, and the salt has magnesium in it, and so it's pulling from the air.
So are
the
you
water.
saying now forget table salt, what we call iodized salt?
Table
How
salt.
about sea salt?
Well, sea salt is still more refined. I don't recommend using just sea salt. I recommend one of these, the Celtic or the Himalayan, because you're going to get more of your vital minerals that your body
Where's
needs.
Celtic and Himalayan come from? Are they just mined out of, are they mined somewhere?
They are from the ocean. They are from the ocean. They are a sea salt. Now Himalayan salt, do you know? Himalayan is an ancient sea salt.
Yeah, if you go to the Real Salt website,
Uh-huh.
because I asked them, I sent them an email and asked them, why do you say your salt is better than Himalayan salt? And they said it's not really. They said that the real salt is an ancient sea salt, and the Himalayan salt is an ancient sea salt.
Okay, so the Himalayan and the real salt are ancient sea salts.
And because
Where do they come from? The ocean?
well, they don't say that, but that's my thought. Before the flood.
Before the flood. Antediluvian. Aren't you doing a presentation on salt tonight?
It was providential, I believe.
Yeah, okay, so she's going to answer the questions that I neglect to answer. So, okay, so what that works out to basically is for every quart of water, you need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And there's that balance. Now, your mind is thinking, that's going to run my blood pressure off the charts. No, it's not. Okay, because that's going to get the fluid from the interstitial, the spaces between the cells, into the cells, and it's going to fix your problem. Yes.
Is that why lots of times you drink water, it just seems like it goes right back out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because your body's not hanging on to it. That's one of the reasons. There's other reasons too, but yes, that can be one of the reasons. So. Okay, drinking water without adequate salt and potassium intake will not correct dehydration, and that's your friend. For some reason, drank 5 gallons of water. He was trying to correct this, and he was just compounding the problem. Potassium in the diet comes from fruits and vegetables. Salt should come from Celtic or Himalayan salt to get a balance of the essential minerals. So we can see why it's so important and why God dealt with water in the beginning when He made us. For with you is the fountain of life, in your light shall we see light. Water is a very vital thing. Does everybody understand half your body weight in ounces of water each day with the salt? Do I need to touch on that a little bit more?
So if I weigh 170 pounds, I just divide that number in half.
And you drink that many ounces of water? Yes. For me,
85.
100 pounds, I would need 50 ounces of water per day. Okay? And then plus the salt that it recommended. So. Okay? Any questions?
So do you limit yourself to 50 ounces, or do you just?
No, I don't limit myself. That's the minimum that I need, but I drink more. I drink more than that. I do. And
When
a
I'm
couple.
sweating, I drink lots more than that.
My husband, in fact, when he's doing he's doing landscaping right now. It's hot. It's the middle of the summer. He takes a big old thermos thing full of water, and I put a couple of those salt crystals in there, because if he just replaces that water and he doesn't replace the salt, I'm making my husband sick. Okay? Because he needs the water. He's trying to rehydrate him. Give him the Celtic and the Himalayan salt in his water. Yes, ma'am.
And you do that for his work bottle.
What's that?
The water bottle he takes to work. So.
In the water bottle, sometimes I put that in there.
How much? Just a couple crystals?
It's for every quart you need a quarter teaspoon. Okay.
And you demonstrate as if that's a half-gallon water bottle.
No, it's a gallon. It's a gallon, right? Yeah.
You're talking, you put.
Well, I was trying to hide it. I was trying for him not to taste it. So, but now that I'm out in the open and he's recording this,
Why does this taste funny?
there is a rehydration solution that you can make if you're going to be outside and stuff and you think somebody's dehydrated. I think it's a quart of water and a quarter teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of honey, because it takes your body needs the energy from the honey to do this sodium potassium pump thing that's run by ATP. I think it's a teaspoon of honey and a quarter teaspoon of salt and a quart of water. Yeah. And so
You
that's
talk about the sea salt there, not the table salt.
sea salt. When I say salt now, I recommend that you ditch all of the sodium chloride, all of the table salt, and never use it again. Treat it like a poison. It's good to kill plants. It'll kill weeds. You pour it on weeds, it'll kill them.
And slugs.
What?
It'll
Slugs.
kill slugs real good.
Oh yeah, kill slugs. Why?
You watch them just melt away. It sucks the moisture out
It
of them.
sucks the moisture right out of them, and that's what it's
I don't
doing to
think
your
that's a kind
cells.
way to get rid of slugs, but I don't know a good way to get rid of slugs. The salt, put salt on the slugs.
It draws the water out of the slug, and that's what it does to our bodies. That should let us know.